Captain Jin-Ho stared at the swirling colors outside his ship's window. The Soul's Pride was humanity's first ship to leave their solar system. It was their chance to meet other intelligent life in the galaxy. Jin-Ho had practiced his first contact speech 100 times. "Captain, we have a problem," said Dawn from the engine room. Her voice sounded worried through the ship's communication system. "The FTL drive is acting strange. The readings don't make sense." Jin-Ho walked quickly to the engine room. Da-Un was his best engineer, and she never worried about small problems. When she was concerned, it meant real trouble. "What kind of strange?" Jin-Ho asked. Da-Un pointed at her screens. Numbers were flashing red everywhere. "The drive is pulling too much power. It should be running smooth, but it's like something is fighting against it. We're going much faster than we planned. Can you slow us down?" "I'm trying, but the controls aren't responding properly." Da-Un's hands moved quickly over her control panels. "Captain, I think we're going to drop out of FTL space soon, whether we want to or not." Jin-Ho felt his stomach drop. They were supposed to meet the Galactic Council at a safe distance from their main station. The plan was to send a simple message asking for permission to approach. Now they had no control over where they would appear. "All crew prepare for emergency FTL exit," Jin-Ho announced over the ship's speakers. "Secure everything that can move." The ship shook violently. Through the windows, the swirling colors of FTL space began to change. They were being pulled back into normal space, but something was wrong. Instead of empty space with distant stars, Jin-Ho could see a massive structure ahead of them. "Dawn, tell me that's not what I think it is," Jin-Ho said. "If you think it's the biggest space station you've ever seen, then yes, that's exactly what it is." Dawn was still working on her controls. "Captain, we're heading straight for it and I can't change our direction." The space station was enormous. It looked like a giant crystal flower floating in space, with thousands of lights glowing from its surface. Ships of all different shapes and sizes moved around it like insects around a bright lamp. "That has to be the Galactic Council's main station," Jin-Ho said. "We're not supposed to be here yet." "Well, we're about to be very much here," Da-Un replied. "And we're coming in way too fast." Jin-Ho ran back to the bridge and grabbed the communication controls. Maybe he could contact the station and warn them. "This is Captain Jin-Ho of the Earthship Soul's Pride. We have an emergency. Our ship is out of control and heading toward your station." Static filled the communication channel. Then a voice replied, but it didn't sound human. The words were translated by their computer, but the tone was cold and formal. "Unknown vessel, you are approaching restricted space during the Millennium Peace Accord ceremony. Change your course immediately or you will be fired upon." "We're trying to change course, but our engines won't respond," Jin-Ho replied. "This is not intentional. We need emergency assistance." The alien voice paused. "Earth vessel? There is no authorized Earth vessel in this system. You do not have permission to approach Nexus Station." "Permission or not, we're coming whether we want to or not," Da-Un shouted from the engine room. "Captain, 30 seconds until impact." Jin-Ho could see the space station getting larger and larger through the front window. He could make out individual sections now. There were thousands of windows and many of them had lights inside. This was clearly a very important place, and they were about to crash into it. "All crew brace for impact," Jin-Ho announced. "This is going to be rough." The Soul's Pride hit something invisible first. The ship sparked and shook as it passed through what must have been an energy barrier. Alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Then they hit a second barrier and a third. Each one slowed them down a little, but not enough to stop them completely. "We're going through their defenses," Da-Un reported. "These barriers are designed to stop weapons, not entire ships." The ship finally crashed through the outer wall of the space station. Metal screamed against metal as they slid across what looked like a huge open area filled with seats. Thousands of different alien creatures scattered in all directions as the Soul's Pride carved a path through their gathering place. When the ship finally stopped moving, everything was quiet except for the sound of small fires crackling and emergency alarms beeping. Jin-Ho slowly picked himself up from the floor where the impact had thrown him. "Is everyone alive?" he called out. "I'm okay," Da-Un replied. "The engine is not okay, but I'm fine." The other crew members reported in one by one. Nobody was seriously hurt, which was more luck than Jinho had expected. He looked out the front window and saw hundreds of alien faces staring back at him. Some looked curious, others looked angry, and many looked terrified. "Captain," said Lieutenant Hyun-woo, who was at the sensor station. "I think we just crashed into their most important meeting room. Those aliens out there are wearing what look like official government clothes." Jinho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. This was definitely not how first contact was supposed to happen. When he opened his eyes again, he saw that some of the aliens were approaching the ship. They were carrying devices that might have been weapons. "Daewon, how long before you can get the engines working again?" "The engines? Captain, I'll be lucky if I can get the lights working again. We're not flying anywhere for a while." "Then I guess we're going to have to meet our new neighbors in person." Jinho straightened his uniform and walked toward the ship's exit door. "Open the main hatch. Let's see if we can talk our way out of this." The door opened with a loud hiss. The air that came in smelled different, but it was breathable. Jinho stepped out of his ship and looked around. The room they had crashed into was enormous, with a high ceiling covered in glowing symbols. The seats they had destroyed looked like they were arranged in careful patterns around a central stage. Hundreds of different alien creatures were watching him. Some looked almost human. Others were completely strange. One looked like a giant crystal spider. Another looked like a floating cloud with eyes. A few looked like they might be robots. "Greetings," Jinho said loudly, hoping his voice would carry across the room. "I am Captain Jinho of the planet Earth. We come in peace. Our ship had a malfunction and we did not mean to interrupt your meeting." The aliens whispered among themselves in languages that Jinho's translator couldn't understand. Then one of them stepped forward. It was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. When it spoke, Jinho's translator made its words understandable. "I am Council Prime Jex," it said. Its voice echoed strangely in the large room. "You have violated the most sacred space in the galaxy during our most important ceremony. The Millennium Peace Accords have been interrupted for the first time in 500 years. Jinho felt his heart sink. This was getting worse by the minute. "Council Prime Jex, I apologize deeply for this accident. We are explorers from a young planet, and this is our first time leaving our solar system. We did not know about your ceremony." "Your ignorance does not excuse your actions," Jex replied. "You have brought chaos into a place of order. You have disrupted agreements that took decades to prepare." More aliens were gathering around them. Now, Jinho could hear them talking in many different languages. Some sounded angry, others sounded afraid. He couldn't understand most of what they were saying, but their tone was clear enough. "We will make repairs for any damage we caused," Jinho offered. "Our engineer is very skilled and we have materials on our ship." Materials. Jex's 4 eyes all focused on Jinho at once. "You think this is about materials? You have broken protocols that are older than your entire species." Daewon appeared at Jinho's side, still covered in engine grease from trying to fix their ship. "Captain, we have bigger problems. The reactor is unstable. If I don't get it under control soon, we might have an explosion." The alien conversations around them suddenly got much louder. The word explosion apparently translated very clearly into all their languages. "You brought an unstable reactor into Nexus Station?" Jex's voice rose in what sounded like panic. "Clear the chamber. All delegates to emergency positions." Wait. Jinho called out as the aliens started to move quickly toward the exits. "My engineer can fix it. Daewon, how much time do we need?" "Give me 20 minutes and some space to work," Daewon said. She was already heading back toward the ship. "And tell everyone to stay calm. Panicking won't help anything." "Stay calm?" Jex looked at Jinho like he had lost his mind. "Your species crashes through our defenses, destroys our ceremony, and brings an explosive device into our most important station, and you want us to stay calm? It's not an explosive device, it's just a power source that's having some problems," Jinho tried to explain. "Think of it like a very large battery that's overheating." This explanation did not seem to make the aliens feel any better. In fact, Several more groups of them headed for the exits. Jinho was starting to understand that his people's idea of acceptable risk was very different from what these aliens were used to. A new alien approached them. This one looked like a tall, elegant bird with feathers that changed color as it moved. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Ethereal Consortium. Human Jinho, your species is unknown to us. How did you acquire faster-than-light travel? 3 months had passed since the Soul's Pride crashed into Nexus Station. News of the incident spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. In trading posts, diplomatic stations, and military bases, beings talked about the strange, new species that had appeared out of nowhere and disrupted the most important ceremony in galactic history. Commander Taijin did not know about any of this when he launched from Earth in the military vessel Busan's Thunder. His mission was simple: find Captain Jinho and bring him home safely. The Soul's Pride had been missing for months, and Earth's government was worried. "Commander, we're picking up some strange signals," reported Lieutenant Sora from the pilot's seat. "It sounds like there are a lot of ships in the area ahead of us." Taijin looked at the sensor displays. There were definitely ships out there, but they weren't moving in normal patterns. Instead, they seemed to be gathered around something. "Take us in slowly," Taijin ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with before we announce ourselves." As they got closer, they could see dozens of alien ships surrounding what looked like a large planet. Some of the ships were fighting each other, while others just watched from a distance. The planet's surface was covered with cities, and many of them seemed to be on fire. "This looks like a war zone," Sora said. "Should we leave and look for another route?" "Wait," said Dr. Wu Jin, who was their expert on alien cultures. "I'm picking up communication signals from the planet. Someone down there is asking for help." Taijin frowned. Their mission was to find Jin Ho, not get involved in alien wars. But if people were asking for help, could they just ignore that? "Put the signal through our translator," Taijin decided. The voice that came through their speakers was desperate and frightened. "This is the resistance on Krithia. We are slaves fighting for our freedom. The Overlord ships have us surrounded. If anyone can hear this, please help us." Dr. Wu Jin looked at the sensor readings. "Commander, those aren't military ships fighting down there. Most of the weapon signatures are very basic. This looks like slaves fighting with simple tools against much better armed masters." Taijin thought about his orders. Find Jinho and come home. Don't get involved in galactic politics, but he also thought about his training as a soldier. Protect people who couldn't protect themselves. "Sora, can you get us past those Overlord ships without being detected?" "I can try, but why are we going down there? This isn't our fight." "Maybe not, but those people need help and we're here." Taijin made his decision. "We're going to see if we can do something about this situation." Sora was an excellent pilot. She managed to slip the Busan's Thunder past the Overlord ships by following the path of some space debris. The Overlord ships were focused on the planet and didn't notice one more piece of metal floating among the wreckage. They landed in a city that looked like it had seen heavy fighting. Buildings were damaged, and there were small fires burning in several places. A group of aliens approached their ship cautiously. They looked like tall, thin humans, but their skin was gray, and their eyes were much larger. The leader of the group spoke when Taijin opened the ship's door. "We saw your ship land. Are you here to help the Overlords recapture us?" "No," Taijin replied. "We heard your call for help. We're from a planet called Earth." The aliens looked confused. "Earth? We have never heard of this world." Dr. Wu Jin stepped forward. "We're new to this galaxy. We're still learning about all the different species and cultures. Can you tell us what's happening here?" The leader, who called himself Naltek, explained that the Krithians had been slaves for over 200 years. The Overlords used them to mine valuable crystals from deep underground. Recently, some Krithians had learned to fight back, but they didn't have good weapons or ships. "The Overlords have much better technology than we do," Nalthek said. "We can fight on the ground, but we cannot win in space. Their ships will eventually destroy our cities." Taijin looked up at the sky, where he could see the lights of the Overlord ships moving between the clouds. "How many Overlord ships are there?" 12 large warships and many smaller ones," Nalthek replied. Their shields are very strong, and their weapons can destroy entire city blocks. Dr. Wu Jin was studying the readings on his scanner. Commander, I'm detecting some interesting energy patterns from those ships. Their shield technology is impressive, but it has a weakness. What kind of weakness? The shields are designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, but they might not be able to handle something unexpected, like a ship ramming into them at high speed. Sora looked at Dr. Wu Jin like he was crazy. You want us to ram our ship into their warships? That's suicide. Not ram directly, Dr. Wu Jin explained. But if we could create a distraction, maybe disable one or two of their ships, it might give the Krithians a chance to fight back more effectively. Taejin thought about this plan. It was dangerous and probably not very smart. It was also exactly the kind of thing that might work, because the overlords wouldn't expect it. Nalthek, how many fighters do you have who can use weapons? Perhaps 3,000, but they only have basic plasma rifles and explosive charges. That might be enough. Taejin looked at his crew. Here's what we're going to do. Sora, you're going to take our ship up there and cause as much trouble as possible. Fly in patterns they don't expect, hit them with everything we have, and try to confuse them. While I'm doing that, what will you be doing? Dr. Wu Jin and I are going to help the Krithians organize a ground assault on the Overlord Communication Center in this city. If we can cut off their ability to coordinate their ships, they won't be able to respond effectively to your attack. It was a simple plan, which meant there were many ways it could go wrong. But sometimes simple plans worked when complicated. Ones failed. Sora took the Busan's thunder back into space while Taejin and Dr. Wu Jin worked with Nalthek to gather fighters. The Krithians were brave, but they had never fought a coordinated battle before. Most of their resistance efforts had been small raids and sabotage. The key is timing, Taejin explained to the group of Krithian fighters. When you see the fireworks, start in the sky. That's when we move on the communication center. Hit it hard and fast, then get out before they can send reinforcements. High above them, Sora was starting her attack run on the Overlord fleet. She didn't try to fight all 12 ships at once. Instead, she focused on the smallest one, hitting it with missiles and energy beams while flying in crazy patterns around it. The Overlords had never seen anything like human piloting before. Most galactic species flew their ships in predictable patterns based on mathematical calculations. Sora flew like she was dancing, spinning and diving in ways that made no sense to the Overlord targeting computers. What is this ship doing? The Overlord fleet commander demanded. Its flight patterns are completely random. Should we focus all our firepower on it? Asked his second-in-command. Yes, destroy it immediately. But when all 12 ships started shooting at Sora, she simply flew between them, causing their energy beams to hit each other instead of her ship. 2 Overlord vessels were damaged by friendly fire before their commander realized what was happening. On the ground, Taejin saw the explosions in the sky and gave the signal to attack. 3,000 Krithian fighters charged the Overlord communication center from 6 different directions at once. The Overlords in the center were good soldiers, but they were used to fighting disorganized slave revolts. They had never faced a coordinated assault planned by someone with military training. Their defenses were overwhelmed within minutes. Dr. Wu Jin worked quickly to disable their communication equipment. Commander, I'm shutting down their main transmitter now. The ships won't be able to coordinate their attacks anymore. In space, the Overlord fleet was falling apart. Without communication, each ship was acting independently. Some were still chasing Sora, others were firing randomly at the planet, and a few were trying to retreat to a safe distance. Sora took advantage of the confusion to attack the largest Overlord ship. She flew the Busan's thunder directly at its bridge, then pulled away at the last second while firing all her weapons. The Overlord captain, distracted by trying to avoid a collision, didn't notice the missiles heading for his engine section until it was too late. The largest ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The other Overlord ships, seeing their flagship destroyed, decided that fighting was no longer a good idea. They jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared, leaving the Krithians free for the first time in 2 centuries. Nalthek and his people celebrated like they had never celebrated before. They sang songs, danced in the streets, and declared Taijin and his crew to be the greatest heroes in Krithian history. "We will tell stories about this day for generations," Nalthek said. "The humans who came from nowhere and set us free." Dr. Wu Jin was concerned about something else. "Commander, word of this battle is going to spread. Other species will hear that humans defeated an overlord fleet. Is that a problem?" "Maybe. The galaxy seems to have very specific ideas about how different species should behave. If we keep doing unexpected things, it might cause complications." Taijin thought about this as they prepared to leave Krithia. The Krithians had given them information about where they might find the soul's pride. But they, in the darkest region of space where even the bravest traders feared to travel, stood the Apex Citadel. It was a massive black structure that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of obsidian. No lights showed from its surface, and no signals came from its communication arrays. To most of the galaxy, it was a place of nightmares. Inside the Citadel, Kyung-min sat in a chamber surrounded by floating displays showing information from across the galaxy. As the prime hunter of the apex species, Kyung-min had spent 3 centuries maintaining the balance of power that kept weaker species under control. The apex were the ultimate predators and every other species knew it. But today, the displays showed something that had never appeared before. Reports of a species that acted completely outside all known patterns. "Velkan," Kyung-min called, to another apex who stood nearby. "Explain to me how a previously unknown species has disrupted 3 major galactic events in the past 4 months." Velkan was younger than Kyung-min, having only hunted for 50 years, but was considered one of their best scouts. "The reports are difficult to believe, Prime Hunter. This species called humans appears to solve problems using methods that should not work." "Methods that should not work but do work?" "Yes, Prime Hunter. They crashed their ship into the Galactic Council's most sacred ceremony and somehow avoided being immediately destroyed. They defeated an overlord slave fleet using flight patterns that violate basic tactical principles. Most recently, one of their survey ships was captured by raiders, and instead of being sold as slaves, the entire raider organization converted to a peaceful trading company." Kyung-min stood and walked to the largest display. It showed a map of the galaxy with red marks indicating where human ships had appeared. There were only a dozen marks, but each one represented an event that had changed the local balance of power. "How many humans are there?" "Intelligence suggests their home planet has several billion individuals, but they have fewer than 20 ships capable of interstellar travel." 20 ships have caused this much disruption? "According to our sources, most human ships never intended to cause any disruption at all. They appear to be explorers who accidentally interfere with established systems, simply by existing." This information troubled Kyung-min more than any military threat ever had. The Apex maintained their dominance through careful control of how other species behaved. They allowed certain amounts of conflict and change, but always within predictable limits. A species that created unpredictable changes could destroy everything the Apex had built. "Velkan, I want you to capture one of these humans. Bring them here so I can understand how their minds work." "Which human should I target, Prime Hunter?" Kyung-min studied the display showing human ship movements. One ship had separated from the others and was currently investigating an abandoned research station in neutral space. It would be isolated and easy to capture. "This one, the survey vessel. Take a hunting pack and bring me their crew alive. I want to study them before deciding how to deal with their species." Velkan bowed and left to prepare for the hunt. Kyung-min remained in the chamber, studying the reports about humans. Every other species in the galaxy could be understood through their history, their biology, and their culture. Humans seemed to defy all attempts at analysis. 3 days later, the human survey ship Morningstar was exploring the research station when Apex hunters attacked. The human crew never had a chance to fight back. Apex hunting technology was designed to capture prey without damaging them, and it worked perfectly. Dr. Hae-won was the chief scientist aboard the Morningstar. When she woke up, she found herself in a small dark room with walls that seemed to absorb light. She was not restrained, but when she tried to touch the walls, her hand passed through them as if they were made of thick liquid. "You are awake," said a voice from somewhere in the darkness. HFY turned around but could not see who was speaking. "Where am I? Where is my crew?" "Your crew is safe and unharmed. You are aboard an Apex vessel and I am Velkan. I have brought you here so that our Prime Hunter can speak with you." Apex? HFY had heard rumors about the Apex, but most people thought they were just legends. "You're the predator species that hunts other civilizations. We maintain galactic stability by controlling populations that grow too aggressive. We are not evil, we are necessary." HFY found this interesting rather than frightening, which surprised her. That's an unusual way to think about yourselves. Most predators don't see themselves as performing a public service. Velkan appeared from the shadows. HFY could see that the Apex looked somewhat like humans, but taller and thinner, with pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Their eyes were completely black, and their movements were perfectly silent. "You are not afraid," Velkan observed. "Should I be? Every other species we have encountered shows immediate fear when they meet us. Fear is a natural response to predators." "Well, you said you're not going to hurt me, and you seem to be intelligent beings with your own culture and society. Why would I be afraid of that?" HFY looked around the room with curiosity. "This is fascinating technology, by the way. The walls appear to be some kind of programmable matter." Velkan stared at her for a long moment. "You are studying our technology while you are our prisoner? I'm a scientist, I study everything. Besides, if you wanted to kill me, you would have done it already. So either you're going to let me go eventually, or you want something from me. Either way, I might as well learn something while I'm here." This was not the response Velkan had expected. Most captured beings spent their time begging for mercy or trying to escape. This human was treating her capture like an educational opportunity. "The Prime Hunter will see you now," Velkan said. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch much farther than the ship looked from outside. HFY realized that the Apex had mastered some kind of space-folding technology that made their ships larger inside than outside. "How many species have you hunted?" she asked as they walked. "The Apex have maintained galactic balance for over 2,000 years. We have intervened in the development of hundreds of species." "Intervened how? Do you always capture people, or do you sometimes just observe?" "We do what is necessary to prevent any one species from dominating others. Sometimes this means reducing their population. Sometimes it means destroying their technology. Sometimes it means teaching them to fear consequences. And sometimes it means having long conversations with prisoners who ask too many questions." Velkan stopped walking and looked at HFY. "No, this is the first time that has happened." They entered a vast chamber where Kyung-min waited. The Prime Hunter was older and larger than Velkan, with scars that suggested centuries of hunting. When Kyung-min spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You are the human scientist, HFY. "Yes. And you're the Prime Hunter who wants to understand how human minds work." Kyung-min's black eyes focused on her with an intensity that would have terrified most beings. "How do you know what I want?" "It's the most logical reason for capturing me instead of killing me. You've heard about the disruptions humans have been causing, and you want to know if we're a threat to your system of galactic control. And are you a threat?" HFY thought about this question seriously. "Not intentionally, but yes, probably we are." "Explain." "Your species maintains control by making other species predictable. You study them, learn their patterns, and use those patterns to control their behavior. But humans don't follow predictable patterns even when we try to. All species have patterns. Maybe, but human patterns are so complex and contradictory that they look random from the outside. We make decisions based on emotions, intuition, cultural values, personal experiences, and random thoughts that pop into our heads. Even we don't understand why we do half the things we do." Kyung-min walked around HFY in a circle, studying her from different angles. "If you cannot predict your own behavior, how do you function as a civilization?" "We adapt. When something unexpected happens, we figure out how to deal with it. When our plans fail, we make new plans. When our technology doesn't work, we build different technology. This should make you weak and inefficient. You would think so, but it turns out that being unpredictable can be an advantage in a galaxy where everyone else follows established patterns. Kyungmin stopped circling and faced Haewon directly. Are you suggesting that unpredictability is superior to careful planning? Not superior, just different. Your species has built a very stable system based on everyone behaving in expected ways. But stability can become stagnation if nothing ever changes. Change leads to chaos. Some change leads to chaos. But some change leads to growth, innovation, and new solutions to old problems. Haewon gestured toward the chamber around them. Your technology is incredibly advanced, but how long has it been since you invented something completely new? This question seemed to disturb Kyungmin. The Apex had perfected their hunting technology centuries ago, and since then had focused on maintaining and applying it, rather than developing new capabilities. Innovation is not necessary when existing methods are effective. Maybe. But what happens when you encounter a problem that existing methods can't solve? No such problem has arisen. Yet, Haewon. Admiral Dong Hyun had been promoted from commander to admiral in the 6 months since humans first appeared in galactic society. It was not a promotion he had wanted. He preferred commanding single ships to managing entire fleets. But Earth needed someone to coordinate their growing presence in galactic affairs. He stood on the bridge of the flagship Soul's Honor, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. Each report brought worse news than the last. Admiral, we're receiving another distress call, reported Captain Min Seo from the communication station. That's the 15th planet to go silent this week. Dong Hyun studied the tactical display. Red markers showed the locations of worlds that had been destroyed by something the other species called the Ancient Network. The pattern was clear and terrifying. An automated defense system from millions of years ago had awakened and was systematically destroying all inhabited worlds in its path. How many civilizations have been lost so far? At least 12 complete species, sir. Hundreds of billions of individuals. The bridge crew worked quietly, but Dong Hyun could feel their tension. Everyone knew that the Ancient Network was moving toward Earth's region of the galaxy. At its current rate of destruction, it would reach human space within a year. Sir, we're receiving a priority communication from Nexus Station, reported Lieutenant Yansu. It's from the Galactic Council. Put it through. The image of Council Prime, Jex, appeared on the main screen. The ancient being looked even more tired and stressed than usual. Admiral Dong Hyun, the Council requires human assistance. What kind of assistance? The kind that only your species seems capable of providing. We need solutions that no reasonable species would attempt. Dong Hyun felt a familiar chill. Every time someone asked humans for help with an impossible problem, it meant his people were about to risk their lives doing something dangerous and probably crazy. What exactly are you asking us to do? Meet us at the convergence point in the neutral zone. Bring your best engineers, your most creative thinkers, and your most skilled pilots. We are going to attempt something that has never been tried before. The communication ended, leaving Dong Hyun staring at a blank screen. Around the bridge, his officers exchanged worried glances. Admiral, Captain Min Seo said quietly, the convergence point is right in the path of the Ancient Network. If we go there, we'll be heading directly toward the most dangerous area in the galaxy. I know, but if the Galactic Council is desperate enough to ask for human help, the situation must be even worse than we thought. Professor Yoonji was studying archaeological data in her laboratory when she received the order to report to Admiral Dong Hyun immediately. As Earth's leading expert on ancient alien civilizations, she had been working around the clock to understand the Ancient Network. Professor, what can you tell me about this defense system we're facing? Dong Hyun asked when she arrived on the bridge. It's unlike anything in recorded history, Yoonji replied, activating a holographic display. The network appears to be a galaxy-wide automated system designed to prevent the rise of advanced civilizations. It was built by a species that died, out before most current civilizations even evolved. Why is it activating now after millions of years? According to the data I've analyzed, it activates whenever the total technological capacity of the galaxy reaches a certain threshold. Too many species achieving advanced technology at the same time triggers its defense protocols. Captain Mincio looked at the display with growing alarm. You're saying it's designed to keep civilizations from becoming too advanced? Exactly. It maintains what its creators considered a safe balance by periodically destroying the most technologically developed worlds. Dong-hyun felt the pieces of a terrible puzzle falling into place. And the galaxy just reached that threshold because humans appeared and started changing how other species approach technology and warfare. It's possible, Yoonji admitted. Our interactions with other species may have accelerated their technological development beyond the network's programmed limits. The Soul's Honor arrived at the convergence point to find the largest gathering of ships in galactic history. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species had assembled, including many that normally considered each other enemies. At the center of the fleet was a ship that Dong-hyun had never seen before, a massive black vessel that seemed to absorb light. "Admiral, that's an Apex ship," reported Lieutenant Yeon-soo, his voice filled with fear. "The Apex are here? Why would the galaxy's Apex predators join a defensive alliance?" "Because, Admiral Dong-hyun," came a familiar voice over the communication system. "The ancient network does not distinguish between predator and prey." The image that appeared on the main screen was Kyung-min, the Apex Prime Hunter. Dong-hyun had heard rumors about the mysterious predator species, but this was the first time he had seen one of them directly. "Prime Hunter Kyung-min, I didn't expect to meet you under these circumstances." "Nor I you, Admiral. But circumstances have forced unusual alliances. The network has already destroyed 3 Apex hunting grounds. Our species faces extinction, along with all others." Admiral Dong-hyun realized that the situation was even worse than he had imagined. If the Apex, the most powerful predator species in the galaxy, were seeking help, then the ancient network was beyond any single species' ability to stop. Council Prime Jex's image joined the communication. "Admiral, we have attempted every conventional approach to stopping the network. Our most powerful weapons cannot penetrate its defenses. Our best computer experts cannot hack its control systems. Our diplomats cannot negotiate with an automated system. What makes you think humans can do better?" "Because humans consistently solve problems by using methods that should not work," Kyung-min replied. "And this problem requires a solution that no rational species would attempt." Over the next several hours, Dong-hyun learned the full scope of the challenge. The ancient network consisted of thousands of automated ships, each protected by shields that could deflect any known weapon. The ships were controlled by a central intelligence that had been programmed by a species with millions of years more technological development than anyone currently alive. "The network's programming is flawless," explained Dr. Woo Jin, who had joined the fleet with Commander Tae Jin. "It cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bribed, and cannot be fooled by conventional tactics. So how do we stop it?" asked Captain Jin Ho, who had finally been reunited with his crew after months of diplomatic negotiations. Professor Yoonji had an idea, but it was so dangerous that she hesitated to suggest it. There might be a way, but it would require perfect coordination between human unpredictability and Apex precision. "Explain," Kyung-min demanded. "The network's programming is designed to counter every logical military strategy, but it might not be prepared for a strategy that combines human chaos with Apex hunting techniques." Admiral Dong-hyun studied the tactical displays. "What kind of strategy?" "Instead of fighting the network, we hack it. But not with computers, with behavior. We make ourselves into a virus that the network's programming cannot understand or counter." The plan that emerged from the next 12 hours of discussion was unlike anything in military history. Human ships would approach the network using completely random flight patterns, making themselves impossible to target effectively. Meanwhile, Apex hunters would use their stealth technology to get close to individual network ships. The key was Dr. Haewon's insight from her time as an Apex prisoner. The network is programmed to respond to logical threats, But what if we present it with something that isn't logical at all? Such as? Asked Velkan, who had become the liaison between the apex and the other species. A species that appears to be helping the network while actually sabotaging it. The humans will act as decoys, drawing the network's attention with chaotic behavior. While it's trying to analyze our unpredictable actions, the apex will infiltrate its control systems. Kyung-min considered this plan. You are suggesting that we hunt the network by pretending to be its allies? More than that, Haewon replied. We're going to convince the network that humans are actually a new type of automated ship that it should incorporate into its own fleet. The plan required split-second timing and perfect trust between species that had never worked together before. Human pilots would have to fly their ships in patterns that looked random, but were actually carefully calculated to create specific response patterns in the network's defenses. Lieutenant Sora was chosen to lead the human attack squadron. Admiral, I have to ask, are we sure this is going to work? No, Dong-hyun replied honestly. But it's the only plan anyone has come up with that the network won't be expecting. The battle began with the human ships approaching the network fleet, in formation, then suddenly scattering in all directions. To outside observers, it looked like a complete breakdown in military discipline. But each human pilot was following a carefully planned flight path, designed to trigger specific responses from the network's targeting systems. The network ships tried to predict where the humans would go next, but human pilots kept changing direction, based on intuition, emotion, and split-second decisions that no computer could calculate. The network's artificial intelligence began dedicating more and more processing power to analyzing human behavior, trying to. 1 year had passed since the ancient network crisis ended, and the galaxy was a very different place. President Juyon stood at the observation deck of New Sol Station, Earth's first major diplomatic facility in galactic space, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the station's many ports. Ma'am, the delegates are ready for the opening ceremony, reported her aide, Secretary Han Wool. President Juyon nodded, but continued watching the ships for a moment longer. There was a Crithian vessel docking next to an ethereal consortium diplomatic ship. 6 months ago, those two species had been locked in a trade dispute that had lasted for decades. Now they were working together on a joint mining operation. It's remarkable how much has changed, she said to Han Wool as they walked toward the main conference hall. The Department of Unprecedented Solutions has certainly lived up to its name, Han Wool agreed. Who would have thought that encouraging controlled chaos would lead to more stability instead of less? The conference hall was filled with representatives from over 100 different species. At the head of the room, 2 podiums had been set up. One was designed for human speakers. The other had been specially constructed to accommodate apex physiology. Kyung-min stood at the second podium, looking out at an audience that would have fled in terror from the apex just 2 years earlier. Now they were here to celebrate the first anniversary of the Human Apex Cultural Exchange Institute, the galaxy's first organization dedicated to studying how different species could work together more effectively. President Juyon, Prime Hunter. Kyung-min, announced Council Prime Jex. The Galactic Council is honored to officially recognize the success of the Unprecedented Solutions Initiative. President Juyon stepped up to her podium. 1 year ago, we faced a crisis that threatened every civilized world in the galaxy. Today, we celebrate not just our survival, but our transformation into something better than any of us thought possible. She gestured toward a large display showing statistics from across the galaxy. Trade between previously hostile species has increased by 300%. Scientific collaboration has led to breakthrough discoveries in 17 different fields. Most importantly, the number of armed conflicts has dropped to the lowest level in recorded galactic history. From his podium, Kyung-min added, the Apex have learned that strength comes not from dominating others, but from helping them reach their full potential. We have exchanged the role of predator for the role of protector. In the audience, Dr. Haewon watched the ceremony with satisfaction. She was now the director of the Institute's research division, leading teams of scientists from dozens of species in studying how cooperation could solve problems that competition could not. Sitting next to her was Admiral Dong-hyun, who had been promoted to head of Galactic Defense Coordination. His job was to help different species' military forces work together when facing threats that no single civilization could handle alone. "Admiral," Haywan whispered, "have you seen the latest reports from the Outer Rim? You mean the incident with the Void Pirates?" "That's the one. 3 different species patrol fleets encountered the same pirate group last week. Instead of fighting over jurisdiction, they coordinated their response using the new protocols. The pirates surrendered without firing a shot." Donghyun smiled. "A year ago, those same species would have spent 6 months arguing about who had the right to pursue the pirates, while the criminals escaped to cause more trouble." On the main stage, President Ju Yan was introducing the day's featured speaker, Captain Jin Ho, who had become something of a celebrity across the galaxy for his role in stopping the ancient network. Captain Jin Ho represents everything that humans have brought to galactic civilization, President Ju Yan said. Courage, creativity, and the willingness to try solutions that more cautious species might never attempt. Jin Ho stepped up to the podium, looking out at an audience that included beings he had never dreamed of meeting when he first left Earth. "When the Soul's Pride crashed into Nexus Station, I thought we had ruined humanity's chance to join the galactic community. Instead, we accidentally started a revolution." The audience laughed, a sound that included chirps, growls, harmonics, and electronic beeps from dozens of different species. But the real revolution wasn't caused by human unpredictability, Jin Ho continued. It was caused by every species in this room deciding to try something new instead of doing things the way they had always been done. In the back of the hall, Professor Unji was taking notes for her upcoming book about the changes in galactic civilization. Next to her sat Commander Taijin and Lieutenant Sora, both of whom now served as instructors at the new Interspecies Military Academy. "Professor," Taijin whispered, "what do you think the next big challenge will be?" "Integration of the ancient network's technology into galactic society," Unji replied quietly. "We now have access to millions of years of advanced scientific knowledge, but we need to make sure we use it wisely." Sora nodded toward a section of the audience where several network maintenance units sat alongside biological delegates. The artificial intelligences had become full participants in galactic government, offering perspectives that no biological species could provide. "At least the AIs seem to enjoy parliamentary procedure," Sora observed. "They're probably the only ones who actually read all the legislation before voting on it." On stage, Jin Ho was concluding his speech. "The galaxy succeeded not because we eliminated chaos, but because we learned to use chaos constructively. We discovered that the most powerful force in the universe isn't order or disorder, it's adaptation." After the ceremony, President Ju-yeon and Kyung-min met privately in the station's diplomatic quarters. Despite their alliance, there were still many challenges to work through as their species learned to cooperate. "Prime Hunter, I've received reports about some of your hunters having difficulty adjusting to their new roles," Ju-yeon said, as they sat in comfortable chairs overlooking the station's main docking bay. "Change is difficult for a species that spent thousands of years following the same patterns," Kyung-min acknowledged. "Some of my people struggle with the concept of hunting problems instead of hunting prey. How are you helping them adapt?" "We have established exchange programs with human military units. Apex hunters work alongside human soldiers, learning how your species approaches challenges that cannot be solved through traditional hunting methods." President Ju-yeon nodded. "And how are the humans adapting to working with Apex?" "Remarkably well. Your species seems to treat our presence as simply another interesting problem to solve. Lieutenant Sora recently told one of my hunters that working with Apex was like having a teammate who never misses and never makes noise, which he considered a significant advantage." They were interrupted by a communication from Earth. The main image of Earth's Prime Minister appeared on the room's main screen. "President Ju-yeon, we have an interesting situation developing. We've received over 300 requests from different species asking for human advisors to help solve various problems." "What kinds of problems?" "Everything from urban planning, disputes to trade negotiations to military tactical challenges. Apparently, word has spread that humans are good at finding solutions that other species don't think of." Kyung-min found this development intriguing. Your species has become the galaxy's problem-solving consultants. It seems that way, President Zhu Yan replied. Though I'm not sure we're qualified to solve everyone's problems. Perhaps not, the Prime Minister agreed, but we're apparently qualified to help them think about their problems differently, which often leads to solutions they can implement themselves. After the communication ended, Kyungmin and President Zhu Yan discussed the implications of humanity's new role in galactic society. Prime Hunter, do you think this is sustainable? Can humans really help dozens of different species solve their problems? Not alone, Kyungmin replied. But humans have created something more valuable than solutions. They have created a new way of approaching problems. Other species are learning to think more flexibly, to consider options they would never have imagined before. President Zhu Yan looked out at the busy docking bay where ships were arriving and departing in a constant flow of galactic commerce and diplomacy. You know, when Captain Jin Ho first crashed into the Galactic Council ceremony, I thought it was the worst possible way to make first contact. And now? Now I think it might have been the only way that would have worked. A polite, careful introduction would have made us just another member species. The chaos forced everyone to pay attention and realize that different approaches could be valuable. 6 months later, the success of human-led problem-solving had spread throughout the galaxy. The Department of Unprecedented Solutions had grown from a small experimental program to a major galactic institution with offices on hundreds of worlds. Dr. Wu Jin, who now served as the department's chief cultural advisor, was preparing a report on the social changes that had resulted from increased interspecies cooperation. The most significant development, he wrote, has been the emergence of what we might call collaborative chaos, the deliberate use of unpredictable methods to generate creative solutions to complex problems. His report included case studies from across the galaxy, on